Just by knowing the language a people speak, you can tell so much about that people's culture. I want to share a fascinating example of this with you, that being Proto-Indo-European culture. You see, a few hundred years ago, linguists realized that languages like Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, Russian, even English, they had way too many similarities to just be a coincidence. The only logical explanation is that they were all related. So in the same way all the Romance languages descend from Latin, all the so-called Indo-European languages must have descended from some Proto-Indo-European. But PIE was never written down, and there's little archaeological evidence for it. So surely we know nothing about PIE culture, right? Wrong, because we can reconstruct their language. For example, if you compare a bunch of different Indo-European languages, you can find enough similar words to reconstruct a PIE word for copper or bronze. But if you try this trick with iron, it doesn't work. That seems to suggest that PIE peoples had access to copper or bronze, but not yet iron. So this is our trick for learning about PIE culture. If we can reconstruct a word for it, we know that PIE must have had access to it. For example, we can reconstruct words for grain and seed, as well as the word field, which suggests that PIE peoples had access to agriculture. We also know they must have domesticated animals, because we can reconstruct words for dog, cow, sheep, and even milk. We know they drank alcohol because we can reconstruct a verb meaning to brew and the word mead. And some linguists have even argued that we can reconstruct the word cannabis, thus showing that the PIE peoples smoked weed. But this is disputed. We know they had access to the wheel, though archaeological evidence suggests that they weren't the first to invent it. And we know they must have done at least some seafaring, because we can reconstruct a word meaning boat. So okay, we know about their diet and their technology, but what about their culture? Well, it was probably patriarchal. Not only was the word for husband the same as the word for master, but based on kinship terms and some other vocab words, the society was probably patrilocal and patrilineal, which means that the wife would leave her family and join the husband's upon marriage, and that heritage was traced through the father's lineage. On a lighter note, PIE words will often mean their own opposite. Like the words guest and host are literally cognate. And the word for to give in many Indo-European languages is cognate with the word for to take in others. So what's going on? A leading theory is that PIE culture cared a lot about mutual reciprocity, the idea being that whenever you take, you also give. The two actions being so deeply intertwined, they're viewed as one and the same. And my favorite fun fact, if we compare the names of the traditional Roman, Greek, and Rig Vedic sky deities, we can reconstruct a Proto-Indo-European term for this deity, called Sky Father. There's an extensive literature on trying to figure out PIE religion based on linguistic reconstruction as well as comparative mythology. And how cool is all this, right? Proto-Indo-Europeans lived thousands of years ago and never wrote down a word of their history. And yet, we can reconstruct their culture just based off of the words they've left us.